Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Moletrap here, coming at you with game number 3 of Group C of the On GameNet League of 2004 actually. Too bad it wasn't 2003. It would have rhymed. Actually, it still wouldn't have been a very good rhyme, so never mind. But we got a TVT here, ladies and gentlemen. And so we're going to have green at the bottom left is going to be Sync. And OOV is going to be at the top left. And let's see what color he is again. It's going to be purple. So we got a purple versus teal TVT here. Luckily, they're a little bit different colors, because when there's not many pixels to go around, it's hard to tell the difference in mirror matches sometimes. But yeah, this is gonna be interesting. So this is because OOV he's very, very strong right now, but this may be the match that will kind of decide his fate, I think, because his remaining game is going to be versus Jeju, and it's very likely to be an OOV win, since he's so consistent in his TVZ. So the TVT is kind of the only one that he has to worry about. And this is going to be a really good, I mean, this is really nice for both of these players if they win, because if they do win, then... oh, and actually they're showing on the stats at the bottom that it looks like OOV has actually lost twice. I'm going to have to double check that later to see if I'm correct or not. But looks like they've played twice, and OOV has actually lost both games to Sync before. So that's actually really interesting. If I read that correctly at the bottom, they're putting up those stats in Korean, and so I can't quite read Korean quickly or well enough to know if I'm correct off the top of my head. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so whoever wins this game is going to be 2-0 in their group, because both these players beat the two Zergs in their group, and so whoever wins this is going to be a fantastic position moving forward, because then they'll have a little bit of leeway. They'll still have one game left, but even if they lose it, they'll be at 2-1 and still be likely to advance from the group. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. OOV is the purple, right? I said that a minute ago. Oh gosh, yes, I'm pretty sure OOV is purple. So OOV is going to be scouting into the main here. It looks like Sync has scouted the wrong direction, but now that he sees, okay, enemy SCV in my base, I kind of know where he is, and he's actually going to keep scouting that spot. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see him cross position scout from the bottom right. We'll see if he kind of picks up on that. And no, he's actually going to scout the top right first. So that's interesting. He could have predicted from the fact that there was an early scout in his base that OOV must have come from the top left, but he's not making that determination. He's actually heading up to the top right instead. So that's kind of interesting that he's done that. But he's still going to go ahead and continue on with his build regardless, and getting a factory up very quickly here. Both players are going to be floating their barracks out as well. TVT is a very mech-based matchup. Both players are actually almost identical in builds here, so... excuse me. So, we're probably not going to see too much action for a few minutes here. We may see some vulture-on-vulture action, although we did see that other TVT in Group B that I don't remember exactly who it was off the top of my head, where the early vulture battles determined a very quick victory for one of the players, right? So you never know, that could happen again here. But it looks like, because they're getting two factories up, they're going to be playing for a longer game. It's probably not going to be the situation this game. Sync is finally getting a scout in there, and is going to see, well, hey, look, it's the exact same build I'm doing. Cool. Armory going down for OOV, so it's going to be able to get some Goliaths out. Possibly get started and upgrade as well. Goliaths could be pretty strong against other mech units, actually. They're obviously not as strong as tanks, but they fare fairly well against vultures. And they're actually pretty good fire rate, so they can pick off mines is also a crucial thing. That might be a handy thing for him to be able to get those Goliaths out. Do we have an armory up for Sync, though? It looks like no, we do not. So that's going to be a little bit of an advantage, theoretically, but we can see Sync is doing double upgrades on his vultures as well. So he's going to have those spider mines, which spider mines, I mean, even though Goliaths can pick off mines fairly well, they still are vulnerable to them, whereas, of course, vultures are not vulnerable to spider mines, even enemy spider mines. So, anyway, we're seeing a build of supply depot here, which I remember being puzzled by in another game, and have since realized that it's so that your opponent can't land their barracks in that gap, so that they can't stop your reinforcements from joining a battle or something like that. And so the vultures are in an engagement here, and actually OOV has the worst end of it. He's going to lose 2 vultures. Wow, that is actually a pretty big deal, because now OOV is behind. OOV is just like, he's gonna this is kind of cute actually. He's putting the tanks on either side of the depot so he can block entrance into his base against these vultures, but the vultures can just plant spider mines next to those tanks and force their way in. Well, maybe not with the Goliaths there, and the barracks is there, and it's not going to be able to land, but it is going to be able to soak up pinpoints. And here's exactly what I was talking about. He's going to be able to put down mines next to those tanks and force them back out of that gap. And look at this, he's going to micro forward a little bit, just little by little, to get those mines to pop up one by one and pick them off with the group fire of the tanks and the Goliaths. It doesn't need a scan to do that. But that barracks floating there also means that if there is an engagement, the Goliaths might accidentally target the barracks instead of the units that they want to fire at. So that's kind of could be an interesting thing as well. So he's kind of trying to slowly creep out of here. But there's like a dozen mines, and so it's going to be very slow going to do this. He is doing it slowly and steadily, though, and he actually picks off a vulture as well. Oh, that's too many! Oh, no! And he loses his front line of units. He thought there were no mines left, or maybe he just blundered, and he actually just saw, blood in the water and said, okay, I need to go kill those vultures that are right in front of me. And instead, they got baited into those mines, and now... wow, this is actually a huge deal, because Sync has taken the high ground as well. And you can see OOV has actually landed his barracks there, although it's not actually stopping any units from getting out of Sync's base right now. So Sync actually taking control of this game with the early mine upgrades, forcing him to stay back. But the thing is OOV does have the better units because he has Goliaths and tanks. Although not as many tanks actually, because he lost one of those mines. And oh no, the siege mode goes up first. He's getting a huge pot shot there. Is he going to be able to kill off those tanks? Oh, he does. That second shot kills it off. He's going to go nice and up and close next to that other tank though, so he can just pick that off. So kind of an even exchange though, but I think a better exchange for Sync. 2 tanks for 2 tanks, but Sync also did extra splash damage to the other units. And OOV looking a little bit concerned there, looking at least very focused. And Sync still has tanks up on the high ground above his base, so if he tries to regroup with those units outside, it's still going to be a big deal. OOV has snuck an SCV out though, and he's making a hidden base at the right side of the map, which is very interesting. It kind of needed to, because those tanks right there are in the natural expansion that OOV would want to take. So he can't quite take that right now. So he had to take some other base in order to get that extra expansion. You can see him getting a gas mine first, because he really wants to be able to get the gas units out. It's the tanks, the number of tanks that are going to win the battles in the long run. Well, I mean, the vultures are crucial. The support units protect the tanks, but oh, Sync is hunting. He smells a hidden expansion. He's looking around for it. He's spotted the bottom right. He's scouted the top right. Is he gonna check that base, because it's not a main? It's the natural expansion of the bottom right base that he's taken. And this is interesting. So we do have a starport down. He's now probably making a dropship at this point. He's probably going to try and drop Goliaths on top of those tanks and regain control of his own natural on the high ground. And the vulture is still just running around. And so here we see Sync's first-person view, and he's transferring over SCVs, but he hasn't seen that extra expansion. He's still looking for it. He's now searching the middle of the map for those extra weird expansions in the middle to see if he can spot an expansion there. He's scouted almost everywhere except the one spot that OOV took, which is pretty unlucky actually. And now actually Sync putting down turrets in that base as well to make sure that it's more difficult for OOV to drop on top of that position. Of course, OOV could theoretically siege up on the low ground and fire up at the high ground, float an engineering bay or something like that. Anyway, their dropship is out for OOV though, and what's inside it, and Sync has seen it. He's falling back his units in order to deal with this, but no, actually he's going to go up to the high ground with some Goliaths, dropping Goliaths out. They're going to be able to do significant damage to the SCVs, but the tanks on the low ground are in a nice position. But this thing is Sync didn't send any units to high ground, so it's going to give OOV a little bit of a moment, but he didn't quite seize the moment the way he could have, because he instead dropped the Goliaths in that back corner, which were within range of the low ground tanks. He could have had a few more seconds to kill off 3 or 4 more SCVs if he just kind of dropped a little bit closer to the supply line there, but instead he stops, attacks, moves, stops, attacks, and then has to move again, so he doesn't get too much damage done. But again, it's keeping Sync back, though. Sync is occupied by this back attack, and so he has to deal with it. OOV has a significant number of tanks now, and it looks like here he's going to come in. He's pushing out from the front, while at the same time dropping from the back with his dropship, and it looks like he did drop the Goliath out. And what is going on here? The tanks are actually targeting the low ground tanks instead of the Goliaths. The Goliaths do eventually die, and there's a Wraith out as well and helps polish off that tank. So OOV is still stuck in his base. No, he's not. Never mind. He's got a ton of tanks on the backup position, and that one Wraith is not going to be enough to deal with it. He's going to go ahead and ferry those tanks up with a couple dropships, and he's going to take control of this high ground. But he's lost 2 dropships now. Losing 2 dropship is not good. And actually, wow, significant damage done to the low ground tanks by Sync before he's actually able to clear it off. And Sync has actually reinforced his position. He still has the high ground. And it looks like OOV is about to fall into a pit of lava because he has lost all of his forces. He's lost his dropships. He's lost so many tanks. He's getting assaulted by wraiths. And he has the hidden expansion, I guess, but still, I feel like he's fallen so far behind. OOV has lost every encounter here in these battles, and I can't believe Sync still hasn't found the hidden expansion. I wonder if he thinks he hasn't found it, or if he just doesn't think it exists, and he thinks he's really, really far ahead, but he's actually only somewhat far ahead. Not sure, but OOV is desperately trying to get back into this game by sending out a dropship with his only units, basically, to try and do some more damage. There's some scouting mines around, and where are these Goliaths? What are they doing? I mean, they're just kind of dropping out there. Maybe he feared wraiths or something like that, and he wanted to drop them off. But in any case, there's actually 2 starboards building wraiths right now. So Sync feels that he's so far ahead that he can actually pull this off. And oh, is he going to scout it? This SCV is going in there. And he's like, I've scouted every base on the map, why, except one. I wonder where he is. Now he sees it. Okay. Now I know what's going on. And it looks like, in fact, those that dropship was, I don't know if it was intended for it, but ended up just delivering some Goliaths over to that side base as protection, because now that he's spotted it, without those Goliaths there, he could just send in, 3 vultures and kill off every SCV in that base, or his wraiths, or whatever he wants to do, actually. So those Goliaths there are going to help defend that. But he's like, I've actually got so many wraiths, I'm just going to straight up head-to-head my race against your one Goliath and kill it off. And the tanks are showing the gas from the low ground. The wraiths are protecting the tanks. He's going to bring in even more here. OOV is going to lose this expansion. I don't think there's any way he can save that right now. So, yeah, wow. So OOV, it looks like, is probably going to have to depend on his dependable Terran versus Zerg to get him out of this group, because he's actually going to go to a 1-1 score is my prediction at this point, because he's still contained in his base. His second base is getting shelled, and he's still been contained in his main base. Well, actually, it looks like maybe contained is not the right word. Sync still has some units there, but he has managed to get his troops out. Looks like there actually was a gap. He could just walk them out. He didn't have to ferry them or anything like that. But I wonder if anything's in those dropships. But remember, OOV is the cheater Terran. Ends up being his nickname because he is the macro god. So maybe I'm underestimating him, ladies and gentlemen, because here he comes in with a drop into Sync's main, dropping out some Goliaths, and oh, those were not full. And so there's actually just these reinforcements that he has. But is he going to be able to do some more damage with this? He's dropping tanks out here. Sync is prepared, though. He's got his own tanks in position, sieged up, ready to go. The Goliaths are going to go down. The wraiths can now pick off all of these tanks, even if the tanks can't. And, well, some nice tank shots there, but it's just going to be too little too late. Too little too late. Actually, not even too little too late. Just too little the entire game. Just the entire game, OOV has been on the short end of the stick. And so, yeah, there's the remains of that destroyed command center. So OOV is now officially back on 1 bases. He's going to try and break out here and kill off this containment with his last couple tanks. But Sync has the high ground. He's got the unit advantage. The SCVs are on the low ground, just taking full damage. And there's the GG coming from iloveoov. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So OOV is now at 1-1 in this group. And Sync is up 2-0. Sync is up 2-0. So, wow, that's pretty crazy, actually. Like I said, OOV, he's unstoppable, almost unstoppable in TVZ, but his TVT is not necessarily, it's still good, but it's not up to the same level. And, you know, I actually wonder if things could have been different a little bit if it was a less weird map. You know, if OOV had just been able to maintain a little bit better defensive position on a normal map with a ramp or a choke or something like that, where his opponent couldn't get a high ground advantage on him, and theoretically could have played a macro game. In a macro game, OOV might have been more favored, but Sync did everything right, used the map to his advantage. And let's not forget, it went all the way back to the early game when Sync went for the double factory upgrades, double like machine shop upgrades, and made vultures. And there was a point, I don't know if I can find it quickly enough here, but there was a point where Sync just said, all right, you know what, you've got 2 vultures. It was right before this, I think. You know what, you've got 2 vultures, I've got 5, and whoop, what the heck just happened? You can see my folder, I've got the files stored because the game minimized. That was weird. But I think we might have just missed that clip, actually, but it all came down to that because Sync takes control of the map at that point. And because he is able to, that's why he's able to get this contain going, set up the mines, and this, with the mines, he's got an inferior army because of all these Goliaths and tanks, but this buys him enough time that he gets this. He gets the tanks on the high ground, and that's what clinches it for him, and he never lets go. You know, this is like the alligator getting its jaws around its prey, and the next, 9 minutes of play were kind of the death roll, slow death. Maybe it's not a very good metaphor, actually, because the death roll that alligators do, or crocodiles, whatever they are. Do they both do death rolls with their prey like that? I think they probably do. Where they grab on and then they kind of spin around in circles to try and damage and drown their prey, and then they eat them. So anyway, so point being, what I'm getting at here is that Sync has eaten OOV and drowned him, and it's going to go up 2-0 in the group. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that. Thanks very much for watching. Let me know if you can think of a better metaphor, because it was a long, slow decay of OOV's position from bad to worse to worse. And, hiding that side base was what kept him in for as long as it did. And we can see here on this was the Sync's vision where he's checking the middle, he's checking all the corners. He didn't spot that one spot for so long, and that kept OOV in the game a little bit, but just never was able to quite break the containment in his natural, and lost the game. All right, so hope you all enjoyed that. Thanks very much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time, which I guess already kind of showed it, so we'll switch over here. Next time is going to be Jeju versus Go Rush. And remember, this is round robin style, so this is not spoiling anything because this is going to be the next games regardless. So I guess it might be spoiling something if you can guess from the file size what the length of the game is. All right, let's move on to game 4, which is going to be Jeju versus Go Rush, mixing up the Terran action with a little ZVZ. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.